Y'all, I can't wait to bring you inside of this place. I can't wait to bring me inside of this place. This looks amazing.
There's a lot of magic to be found throughout the old, medieval cities of Europe, but there are two in particular that feel as if they've sprung from the pages of medieval fairy tales or the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Edinburgh, Scotland, and Prague, Czechia. I'd hardly be the first one to stack these two cities together. People seeking an adventure into a world of pure magic and mystery often have a hard time picking between the two. And so, today, we're going to go a little deeper than the surface level. Here on A Sense of Travel, my goal is to capture all 5 senses of as many cities, countries, and natural wonders around the world as possible so that I can accurately immerse you into the physical experience of these places through the screen. That said, today, I'm diving into more than just the things you can experience through photography and bullet lists. How do Edinburgh and Prague stack up in their old-world visual environs, the way the air smells, the delicious culinary classics that define their taste palates, the sounds that fill your ears in the city streets, the physical sensations you'll feel, and the ambience and lore that creates the magic of the atmosphere? We'll find out today in the latest installment of Comparing the Senses, Edinburgh versus Prague. Before we take on the senses, let's take a quick look at the cities by the numbers. Edinburgh is the mystical capital of Scotland, one of the 4 constituent countries that make up the Greater United Kingdom. Just over 500,000 people live in Edinburgh's city limits, and nearly 1 million people live in its metro area. Sitting considerably further south, snugly in the heart of Central Europe and the rolling green hills of Czechia's Bohemia region, Prague is quite a bit bigger than Edinburgh. Czechia's capital is home to nearly 1.4 million people in its city limits and nearly 2.3 million in its metro area. So the first thing to look at when stacking up Edinburgh and Prague is perhaps the most obvious. Their dense, historic cityscapes. We'll kick off in Edinburgh. Edinburgh, along with many of its European neighbors like Rome and Lisbon, is a city on 7 hills. From above, the visual identity of Edinburgh comes into full display. A sea of gray stone, weathered in soot and moisture, with dozens of sharp spires piercing the sky at every turn. Off in the distance, beyond that sea of stone, you can peek at the actual sea, a soft, deep blue. In the other direction, the green and rugged Arthur's Seat towers above the city, joining dozens of other low-rolling hills, a hazy blue in the mist. Edinburgh's story began on Castle Rock, an extinct volcano and the towering hillside home of Edinburgh Castle. Leading up that hillside is the Royal Mile, a regal roadway whose buildings, streets, and hidden alleyways are made up almost entirely of an old, weathered and damp gray stone.
If you're an Edinburgh local, I get it, you're probably thinking, all right, Michael, the Royal Mile is such a tourist trap. But the thing is, yes, it is extremely touristy, but it's touristy for a reason. This is gorgeous, and it is so cool, and it's also just fun. I mean, you've got old Gaelic fighters reenacting a scene out here. You've got Mary, Queen of Scots, posing with some tourists over there. I mean, it's just fun. It's magical when it's fun.
As you imagine your surroundings in the misty cityscape, no matter where you are, you'll be surrounded by Gothic and Georgian stone structures with ornate steeples, wrought iron spires, and stone-paved paths. While the outside world is brisk and chilly thanks to that temperate maritime climate, every little shop, tavern, pub, and cafe has the character of a warm, cozy little refuge. There are tons of these pubs, cafes, and storefront refuges throughout Edinburgh, filled with hearty foods, plenty of ale, and a ton of local tweed and tartan. Little staircases and pathways called closes wind up and down the hills of the city, leading deeper and deeper into the patchwork of the old town. As you spread deeper into the maze of heavy stone, a misty and elegant cityscape awaits, with a great deal of Georgian symmetry, especially in the western neighborhoods of the new town. While most of Edinburgh is an elegant grey stone, Victoria Street is a colorful, cobbled, winding alleyway that many have considered to be the inspiration of Diagon Alley. The Victorian windows and storefronts burst in colors of bright blue, yellow, teal, orange, and pink, with bold red window frames and an eclectic blend of curious shops, a couple of which are, of course, themed to Harry Potter.
It's crazy because even on dark, gloomy, overcast, rainy days, Prague still feels magical.
There's a reason travelers often have to juggle between choosing Edinburgh or Prague for their destination. Prague has one of the largest, best-preserved collections of medieval streets and buildings in the world, and it's obvious from the start. Stone towers and turrets pop up from above the blanket of red clay terracotta roofs, jumbled together like a maze. Prague from above is like a Where's Waldo puzzle. I mean, seriously. The blanket of terracotta low-rise buildings, densely packed together into a maze of creamy, warm facades, is dotted with spiring steeples and towers and interwoven into densely covered hills of green. This is a dense, multi-layered view of a city that, if you discount the whimsical-looking skyscrapers in the distance and the occasional crane, looks as if it hasn't changed in centuries. If you've ever been to Disney World, then you know the sensation I'm about to describe. Stepping into Old Town Prague is like walking into the Magic Kingdom, albeit a far denser version. Large cobblestones blanket the winding, bright medieval streets lined with 4 to 5 story buildings of old European Baroque, Gothic, and Art Nouveau architecture, each adorned with decorative windowsills, lanterns, wooden doors, and rickety signs. In contrast to Edinburgh's stately stone facades, the bright colors of mustard yellows, beige, cream, olive green, pastel pink, golden tan, and white, mixed with beige and gray stone, greet you on the ground, with aged bronze and bright clay terracotta roofs towering above. Breaking up those dense streets are large blocks dominated by beautiful churches that wind in seamlessly. Occasionally, squares that squeeze into the slithering streetscape bear dining terraces and cafe seats. Most of the sidewalks here are cobbled in contrasting shapes and patterns, reminding me a bit of Lisbon, Portugal. Quite often, you'll find little passageways between streets that run through building courtyards, usually accompanied by even more shops and restaurants. Just like in Edinburgh, as you wander through Prague, you get the sense that you're surrounded by medieval royalty. From the statue-adorned stone Charles Bridge crossing the deep Vltava River, the magnificent Prague Castle towers above you on a hilltop. The warm-colored, terracotta-topped Malá district greets you like a royal main street behind arched stone gates. Of course, the cityscape isn't all medieval. As I mentioned, a modern business district of skyscrapers pops out in the distance, and shinier, modern landmarks like the Dancing House bring a 21st century layer to this artistic, bohemian storybook of a city. To sum it up quickly, Edinburgh is an elegant, mystical, stone cityscape that blankets its hilly, moist, and striking setting with medieval streets, Georgian sophistication, and a haunting lore, while Prague is a sea of red clay roofs, whimsical spires, more colorful facades, and a bit more of a fairy tale twist to its magic. The city's overall color palettes differ quite a bit regarding the overall cityscapes, as indicated here. When you see a picture or a video of a place and you try to imagine what it must feel like to actually be there, an important component of that is the way the air smells. Let's see how Edinburgh and Prague stack up. Thanks to its location on the Firth of Forth, which opens right up into the North Sea, Edinburgh has a nautical nature and there's a seaside ruggedness to the scentscape here. The often misty air that you'll feel on your skin throughout the day keeps the blanket of mossy stone damp and moist, a scent that almost radiates from the buildings and the cobbles. The air here, thanks to the sea and the vast amount of green space, smells brisk and fresh and certainly salty, although, as you stroll, you'll catch the occasional puff of vape and cigarette smoke to balance it out. Scents of fresh rain, wet grass, and damp earth fill your nostrils throughout the city, especially in places like Arthur's Seat or Calton Hill. All things considered, if I created an Edinburgh scented candle, it would include notes of mossy stone, fresh rain, damp earth, smoke, and salt water. Now, Prague is a sweet-smelling city. Throughout the cobbled, colorful maze of streets, you'll catch wafts of sweet perfumes from the shops and the Praguers themselves, sweet pastries from the dozens of bakeries, old, musty stone and wood from the patchwork of medieval buildings and cobbles, and a bit of cigarette smoke. Depending on the time of day, fresh coffee joins that already sweet and weathered scentscape. Unlike Edinburgh, Prague's air isn't super humid, so the natural setting doesn't waft into the heart of the city streets as much as you might think. But as you get to the edge of the Vltava River or the oasis of Petrin Hill, fresh river water and flowering bushes replace those urban city scents in your nostrils. If I were to create a Prague-scented candle, it would smell of sweet pastries, damp stone, fresh water, smoke, vanilla musk, and coffee. Let me know in the comments which of these two cities has a scent profile that you prefer more. Maybe I'll create these candles one day after all. The tastes of Edinburgh and Prague are tough to compare because, well, they're nothing alike. But alas, that doesn't mean we can't still give it a shot. Let's take a look at how they stack up. Edinburgh is misty and mysterious, and so, naturally, the food should be cozy. You know, I've found that people often turn their nose up at food in the United Kingdom, but Scottish food has its own distinctive identity. And what better a place to sample it than in Scotland's capital city itself? Here are a few of the Scottish dishes that really capture the taste of the city and the country at large. Haggis.
About to eat haggis for the first time, and I'm kind of scared. But I've eaten guinea pig before, so, I mean, how bad can it be, really?
Haggis is a sheep's stomach, cooked in its own blood. But at a cool little sports pub on the Royal Mile, I faced my American fears and I ate it. Doused in potatoes and gravy, haggis tastes like, well, potatoes and gravy. It has the consistency of ground beef, and honestly, I quite liked it. It does have a slight irony aftertaste because, you know, blood. Cullen skink. This hearty, thick hot soup consists of leeks, potatoes, smoked haddock, and onions. Served with brown bread, the Cullen skink perfectly balances each of these flavors and will warm you right up on a chilly Scottish evening. Scottish porridge. Porridge may seem like a pretty common component of breakfast just about anywhere, but Scottish oats are a bit different. These oats are ground from oat groats rather than cut, and it's done right here in Scotland. Filled with seeds, fruits, and berries, this warm bowl of porridge is cozy and filling, and a perfect pairing for a cup of coffee on a rainy morning. Scotch pies. Scotch pies can be a quick pick-me-up, or, if you're willing to eat several, a full-on meal. These little flaky pies are filled with seasoned beef fat and are warm, hearty, and filling, a common theme amongst Scottish food. On the flip side, Prague's culinary scene is less cozy, I would say, and definitely cheesier, sweeter, and more deep-fried. Here are a few of my favorite Czech dishes that I really think captured the essence of the city. Goulash. Goulash is probably the Czech food you're most familiar with. Absolutely hearty, heavy, delicious, and richly sauced in a dark beer sauce, beef goulash came alongside Bohemian dumplings, which are like little bread slices and are perfect for soaping up the leftover sauce. I tried this Czech classic in the Old Town at Kozlona Apropos restaurant. Smazany syr. My friend Mary Ellen, who once lived in Prague, pointed me in the best direction possible. towards Smazany Sear. At a charming old restaurant at the top of the hillside above Malestrana, I gave it a try and, my goodness, it's heavenly. Basically, these are just big fried cheese squares, kind of like mozzarella sticks, but far larger and, of course, squares. Served alongside golden potatoes and tartar sauce, this meal is a cheese lover's paradise. Palacinki. Considered a dessert, but eaten for breakfast by me, Czech sweet crepes are thin, pancake-like crepes that cover a humongous plate. I cannot overstate how surprised I was by their size. Mine, which I got from a cafe I can't pronounce in the lesser town, was filled with cooked cinnamon apple, caramel and raisins, and topped with a mint leaf. It was the perfect balance of sweet and minty. And with a strong coffee to accompany it, it was an unbeatable cozy rainy day brunch. Svíčková. Another traditional Czech classic, the hearty, almost sweet beef dish almost has a sweet barbecue tang to it. Served alongside Czech dumplings, which, again, resemble small slices of bread, I tried this dish in the lesser town. While there are obvious variations in some of the staple dishes, and while these two cuisines are pretty tough to compare, you will find that both the taste of Edinburgh and Prague are delicious, heavy, and pub-worthy. And of course, these are just some of my favorites. This is not even close to a full list of the defining tastes of each city. Edinburgh is definitely a major city and, of course, the Scottish capital, but it ain't that big. The soundscape here reflects that, but that isn't to say that it sounds like a small, sleepy village either. The sounds of seagulls crying above the chimney regularly fills your ears, above the crowds of tourists and pedestrians and even a few locals, bells chiming from the towers throughout town, and footsteps on stone. Car traffic and double-decker buses rumble along cobbled stones and pavement, joining the screech of Edinburgh's trams along their tracks. Within some of those rugged trails and mystical parks, there's a rather mystical soundscape of cawing crows, birds chirping, and bursts of wind. A sound that distinguishes Edinburgh from nearly all others, but most relevantly Prague, is the famous sound of Scottish bagpipes. If you're on the Royal Mile in particular, these are inescapable. Prague, especially in the warmer months, is a city whose soundscape bursts with art and life. Crowds of people chattering and trotting through those patterned cobblestones fill your ears, and they aren't the only ones trotting. Horses and carriages trot along as well. The medieval cityscape is filled with the sounds of screeching trams and cars rumbling along the cobblestones, reminding you that you're still in the 21st century. Each hour, church bells from the seemingly infinite spires and towers echo through the stone urban canyons. There are a lot of bats in Prague, and as such, you'll hear bats crying up in the rooftops, particularly at dusk.
Did you know Prague was known for their jazz clubs? Me either.
Staying true to its artistic and bohemian character, you can't talk about Prague without mentioning its famous jazz music, smoothly and warmly filling the city's dozens of hidden clubs. Here's how the soundscapes of Edinburgh and Prague stack up. Being on an island surrounded by, of course, water, Edinburgh experiences a maritime climate, which means mild to warm summers, cool winters, and an overall moderate feel. Edinburgh is pretty far north, but that good old Atlantic Gulf Stream keeps this part of the world a lot warmer than it otherwise would be at this latitude.
You know, I always wondered why they wear like 5 layers of clothing and robes in the Harry Potter films, but being here in Edinburgh, Scotland, I understand.
Despite being located quite inland, Prague has an oceanic climate, which means warm, comfortable summers, cold, snowy winters, and not a ton of humidity. Like Edinburgh, Prague has pretty moderate temperatures, but unlike Edinburgh, the air is relatively dry, making for a generally pleasant feeling. But even when those days get dark, gloomy, and rainy, the city still feels alive and rather mystical. I'm a strong proponent of the idea that to really capture the spirit and the magic of places around the world, you have to let your imagination roam a bit wild. After all, urban legends, mythological fairy tales, and dramatized history are a big part of the identity of cities and countries worldwide, and the magical and mystical stories and lore that Edinburgh and Prague bring to the table are unrivaled. Letting fantasy and folklore infiltrate your mind as you wander about can really bring out the mystique and the charm in different places. Let's take a look at the ambience that each city evokes. We'll kick off in Edinburgh. It's hard to talk about Edinburgh without using the words mystical, spooky, magical, and rugged. There's a tangible sense of the lore and history that have shaped this misty Scottish city, and it influences almost every moment you spend wandering about the narrow cobbled streets and hillside castle ruins. That spooky sensation really comes into play in haunting graveyards like Greyfriars or the chilling square that hosted the world's most famous witch trials outside of Edinburgh Castle. That lighter and more mystical sensation can really be felt on the climb up Arthur's Seat, where, if the fog is just right, you're whisked away into the grandiose quests of legendary knights, with a touch of magic that suggests Merlin himself wandered these hillsides.
You know, with all of the mist and the fog and really just the sheer isolation on this mountainside, I mean, you can tangibly feel that sense of Arthurian legend and mythology.
That blend of magical and medieval legend spreads throughout the old town, where narrow, mossy stone pathways, the haunting and yet beautiful Edinburgh Castle, and curious apothecaries await, dressed in facades of beautiful, elegant old stone. The rugged and dramatic landscape against the edge of the sea, paired with the kilt-wearing bagpipers, cozy pubs, tartan shops, mystical ruins, royal promenades, and magical apothecaries, whisks you into a world where unicorns, knights, and wizards coexist with the proud Scots of today. The atmosphere in Edinburgh has a mystical and legendary feel to it, but experiencing Prague is more like experiencing a magical, medieval storybook. Of course, yes, it's a modern 21st century city, but when you look past the phones, screens, and modern outfits, you're whisked away into a world that feels like pure magic. The infinite sea of spires, fairy tale stone towers, turrets, medieval signs, and mystical castles create a sense of pure magical fantasy. I know Harry Potter is set in the United Kingdom, which gives Edinburgh a bit of an edge here for me, but if I didn't know any better, I would fully believe that Prague was a world in which witches and wizards were tucked away, where every alleyway and street could be Diagon Alley or Hogsmeade. There's a mystical, medieval magic in the old castles, the mythical astrological clock and its rather morbid lore, the grungy underground jazz clubs, and the beatnik, artistic, and stereotypically bohemian neighborhoods, and it can be hard to convince yourself that you're not actually living in a magical medieval fantasy. The idea here isn't to pit these two cities up against each other. In fact, the idea is to celebrate the fact that there's so much world to discover, experience, and explore. Thanks for diving into the magical European capitals of Edinburgh and Prague with me today, and stay tuned for more city comparisons in the near future. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.